everyone. Can you hear me? A bit, okay. So before we get started, I'll ask you two questions to make sure we get the focus of this presentation correct. So Jan and myself will be talking on two perspectives. We have two different backgrounds as well. I'm an employee of the city. So I want you to raise your hand right now if you're also an employee of some type of government organization. Okay, a few. So everyone that is not a part of a government organization, raise your hand. Okay, so let's look. I think it's 64. Next question. Who has been to Antwerp? A few. Okay. Who will want to go to Antwerp after this talk? Good. So right now, let's talk a bit about the city of Antwerp. So I'm presenting my side of things. Antwerp, as you see here, it's called the Mas. It's the museum at the museum by the water, by the water. We're a big small city, so we're not that small, but we're not big as well. So we have about 500,000 inhabitants. If you can compare it to Helsinki, has 600,000. So we're a bit smaller, but it's not London, it's not Amsterdam. So it's okay. It's just good. The city is comprised of different districts. It's all kind of different small cities within the city. So there's a lot of different people living in a big area. And we have had a research done through our DNA. So what are we as people of Antwerp? We're dynamic, we're proud, we're enterprising, we're dominant. So if you come into Belgium, you talk about Antwerp, we're the most vocal people there. So we always say what we want to say, and we're very straightforward. So, and we're very extrovert. And what's good for this is that we're also innovative. And that's where we want to focus on this talk. So a bit of the background where we came from on the Smart City project is we started with a lot of different projects. Everyone was doing their thing. They came from a good background and they came from the right attitude, but everyone was doing their thing on their own way. So there was no overall vision. So that's where we as a city thought, okay, we need to work on that. There was no use of common infrastructure. There's infrastructure, there's road, there's electricity, there's Wi-Fi, there's free Wi-Fi, but there's all kind of different small things happening everywhere. And so there are a lot of point solutions. So people started from the ground up, from zero, instead of using what's already there. So that's a bit of a problem. If we take our values, so as a city, we have also a few values. We want to have a very digital focus, maximal, we call it maximaal digitaal, which is Dutch for the maximum of digitization. We want to be cost effective like every city. And we stimulate the reuse of tools. We also want to have a lot of people interact with us and not just be only for the top 5%. So we want to be inclusive, we call it. And we want to be a beta city. So let me elaborate a little bit on this. A beta city is not worth less than an alpha city, but it's being a city that's in constant beta. If people know have a software or a web background, a beta is a state that's almost ready for deployment. So we want to be as a city that keeps being on our toes, that keeps wanting to move forward and not go for the endpoint, but keep being better than the last time. Which is an interesting concept, but that's a whole other talk. So what we then thought of was, how are we going to solve this big problem? It's easy. We'll set common visions and priorities. That's something the government officials say. We sit together in big rooms, we talk a bit, and then we have a vision. And that will solve everything. Okay. We have a few focus points, we have smart security, we have smart government, smart mobility, smart environment, and smart city. So everything is going to be smart, and this will solve it. But that said, it's a very wide focus. So if you think of this, if everything is in focus, nothing is in focus. So the solution becomes the problem again. So then we went back to the drawing board, and did come up with those vision and priorities. And instead of doing everything from scratch, and instead of doing everything setting rules and priorities within the project, we developed a set of rules that's applicable to everything. So we have a set of common rules. Next thing is we want to implement a common infrastructure. So instead of doing in this department, in this district, doing one thing, in district do another thing, we want to have a similar an infrastructure that can be used by the whole city and everyone in it as well. And also the companies, which is a difficult task on itself. And the thing is, we want to have scalable solutions. So the thing is, if you have a small project, it's very good if it happens to be working on this one small thing in this small community within this house maybe. It's all good and well and good, but it may not be scalable to a whole city of 500,000 people. So we thought of it being, we test small and we apply big. So how do we do that? And that's actually where the Antwerp Smart Zone comes in. And for that, it's a bit of a more technical thing. And I'll let Jan do the talking on this one. Okay, so. Wow.
Thank you, Michel. Hello, everybody. My name is Jan Adriaenssens. I am the director of what's called City of Things. City of Things is an initiative of IMEC in the city of Antwerp, but we are working on it globally. Does anyone of you know what IMEC is? Nope, so I'll explain. IMEC is a research center in Belgium, but we have global operations. We're a research center on nanoelectronics, digital technology. So we do research going from the hardware side, components of chips, all the way up to networking, software, data analytics, visualization, but also business modeling and user research. This whole area of research, if you look at it from a broad perspective, is very applicable to smart cities. So from the last couple of years, we've really focused as one of our corporate core domains research in smart cities. And that's what I want to talk about, because I think it's really interesting what we're trying to set up with the city of Antwerp. Now, yes, this is my Twitter handle for those who do that sort of stuff. First of all, on cities. Cities, this is a quote I really like, cities are never random. No matter how chaotic they might seem, everything about them grows out of a need to solve a problem. And in fact, a city is nothing more than a solution to a problem that in turn creates more problems that need solutions until towers rise, roads widen, bridges are built, and millions of people are caught up in a mad race to feed the problem-solving, problem-creating frenzy that is a city. This rings very much true. As cities are solutions to economies of scale, of aggregation of people to have a common economy, common defense, and so forth. But smart cities are not the endpoints. Smart cities are just a way of dealing with this problem-creating, problem-solving frenzy. And therefore, smart cities are not about deploying technology. Smart cities are about improving urban life. And this is a focus that, especially in a let's say, technology-oriented research center that I work in, is quite a challenge. Because the first thing our engineers want to do is deploy technology and then look around and say, okay, anyone have any problems we might solve with this narrowband IoT network we've just deployed here? And this is what typically has historically been done in cities, top-down infrastructure solutions. We know the aqueducts, we know the Roman sanitation project, very top-down project that really improved urban life. These were things that improved the health in the cities, by an enormous amount. We've had traffic lights dealing with crossroads. You see here a patent from 1923, very hardware-like traffic light, but still, it did at the time what it had to do. You also have the first traffic lights with a light, but still handled manually. You could say that a lot of these traffic lights were smarter than some of the solutions that came afterwards. And traffic lights became smarter. This is a picture from Copenhagen, where you see that traffic lights are becoming more divergent. You have different traffic lights for cyclists, for pedestrians, for cars. They're connected, they can create green waves, and they can create, again, traffic problems. In Copenhagen specifically for cyclists. So the problem-solving frenzy keeps on evolving. And then, for example, here in Holland, they then create specific signalization for cyclists. Hey, the bridge is up, maybe you as cyclists can go this way. And you can become even more individualized by creating individualized solutions for that one cyclist who maybe doesn't want to take that bridge and has a different route to go. So he takes a sat-nav or a GPS solution for him or her specifically. And this brings us to the second point, namely the top-down infrastructure, from the aqueducts to the sanitation to the traffic lights and so forth, is being mapped with a lot of bottom-up solutions, personalized solutions, things you actually want or need. A traffic light is something for everyone, it's one too many, but you sometimes want a one-to-one solution, personalized solutions. And people have been dreaming about these for quite a while. This is a prototype from early last century, from a sort of a, let's say, a one-dimensional car navigation system. So you rode, and then the scroll kept on rolling. Of course, if you diverged from that road, you had to switch roles. So this was not very automatic. This is a two-dimensional version of that, where you have sort of a cross point following you on the map. Both of them were just prototypes. They never went into large production. You can sort of guess why they weren't very accurate. But also people, it wasn't just for cars. People were actually trying to think about smart watches at the time even. This is from 1920 as well. Let's say, how do you walk from this place to that place? So let's say this is a sort of an early version of a smartwatch. But of course, with the arrival of the global positioning system, things became accurate. People could start doing these things, install these in their cars. These things became handhelds, and we end up with the same thing. You get very accurate, personalized solutions to problems you have. In this case, navigating around. And the amount of data inserted in solutions like this can be big. It can take into account the weather solution. So if you want to maybe use a different road to cycle if the weather is bad or good, depending on traffic or not, and so forth. Do you want to do a lot of climbing, or do you want a flat track? You can get very individualized solutions that, depending on your preference, will be different. And this is what we call the promise of Internet of Things in smart cities. There is a sort of a unique time we have arrived in, combining large-scale top-down infrastructure and individualized solutions from the bottom up. This is, the Internet of Things makes this possible, that we can get a large top-down infrastructure, in this case a lot of data infrastructure, networking infrastructure, that maps with what you have in your hand. And not just a smartphone, it can be somewhat hidden as well. But you can get very individualized solutions, and the two of them work in perfect sync. The individualized solutions tap into the infrastructure feeds the individualized solutions. This is the first time in history that a thing like this is possible, and this is what the promise holds. Now, when you go from sanitation and water to, well, flooding detection, you go from the old traffic lights to the new traffic lights. And these solutions, in an interoperable, standardized way, if you manage your data well, can be combined. And they can be combined into these individualized solutions that can, of course, it's the same handheld device. So flooding alerts and traffic can work with the same data sets, can create interoperable solutions. This is what the promise of IoT in smart cities is all about, that everything, these point solutions Michel was talking about, can get connected. can become interoperable. And of course, these are not just point solutions for flooding only or for bike navigation. These are very broad domains. You can see that public safety and mobility can interact with each other, but also other things that are very crucial in the management of a city from a city perspective. You can, if you manage your data well, you can really start to interconnect all these data sets, and you can really start looking for holistic approaches to actual problems cities have. And of course, haven't you heard all that before? Eh? Yes, this is a sort of a standard smart city talk. Let's make the data interoperable. Let's make things work together. It's not because you have heard this before that it isn't true. Eh? It is very much true, and it is very much at the foundation of what we as a research institute also try to do. What we want to do, and what we keep very much in focus, is the fact that you have to use, and it may be a bit too small, but it's the quadruple helix. If you want to work with solutions for smart city problems, or smart city solutions for actual problems, you need to work with companies, with industry, with research institutes, with the public sector, but very crucially, you have to structurally involve the citizen. If you don't, you'll fail. It's not a sufficient condition to use to structurally involve the citizen, but it is a necessary condition, meaning that if you don't involve your citizens in structurally designing, co-creating solutions for your problems in your city, smart city solutions for problems in your city, you will fail. You will have the perception of being a surveillance tool. You will have the perception of being a big brother installation that deploys its data solutions over its citizens without actually structurally involving them. It will be detached, and it will create a backlash. Now, this is one of our strategy slides for us as a research institute. So I'll briefly, just one slide, briefly talk you through it. So what we as a research institute are quite strong at is, on the one hand, our digital technologies, semiconductor technologies, CMOS sensor technology, flexible technology, printable technology, and so forth, smart clothing and so forth, very hardware focused. And the other one is very much more software focused. You still hear me? Okay. Oh, yeah, back. Okay. So much more digital technology platforms, network technology, digital security and privacy, data science, but also business modeling, living lab research, user research. That's what we do. And if you look at smart city problems, so basically real problems that cities have, there's very much a mismatch between, well, having a network, having a sensor, and having an actual problem to solve it. So that's why we focus in our strategy on this layer in between, which we call enablers, things that people in the city management actually need and want to as building blocks for smart city solutions. Things like passerby scanning. How many people are walking through the street from this place to that way? Biking from where to where? On the public transport from where to where? A lot of cities do this stuff with mobile tracking, with Wi-Fi tracking, Bluetooth tracking, camera-based, radar-based, LiDAR-based. And a lot of these systems work in some circumstances and not in others. There is no cheap, affordable, general solution yet. That is, there are solutions, they are expensive. There are other solutions, they're cheap and not as accurate. So a lot of work on passerby scanning. Behavior change in mobility, in energy use. A lot of people need to work on behavior change in cities, because if you want to manage cities, people need to sometimes change their behavior. Air and water quality, very timely. Digital signage. If you want to have solutions that are not smartphone dependent, you need other ways to communicate with your smart citizens. Privacy, of course, is crucial. Needs to be in all of your solutions, intrinsically part of these solutions. Open data, cybersecurity, and so forth. These are building blocks for smart city solutions, but these are also roadmaps, technology roadmaps. So they work towards the top as building blocks for your smart city solutions. They work to the bottom as technology roadmaps. And of course, for each of these enablers, we have built or are building consortia, public-private consortia of research institutes, companies, and of course the public sector, to address these building blocks, these enablers. Now, City of Things, the initiative in Antwerp that I lead, fits in this perfectly. City of Things is a reference living lab and technology lab for international and local stakeholders, where we create, test, and validate IoT services, applications, and technologies in a neutral, large-scale, real-life, and real-time smart city environment. Okay, that's a lot. Each of these words is important in itself. One of the things we, in Antwerp, because Antwerp is a city of 500,000 people, we've, as Michel told, together with the city of Antwerp, we've set out a smaller area of 2.5 square kilometers in the center of the historical city as a smart zone, where we will focus a lot of not only our research and deployment, testing and validating, but also the city will focus its energy there, and companies will focus its energy there. It's a very mixed neighborhood. We have a very big, busy shopping street with high-end retail, with trams and cars and bikes all through the same street. It's madness. There's another street, which is a very quiet walking street with antique shops and very nice to stroll around. There's more than half of the area is social housing. There's parks. The quadruple helix is present. There's research institutes there and so forth, lots of companies there. And it has a strong community with it. So we focused on that zone to deploy a lot of technology, but also work with the citizens to actually map the problems they have and look for technological solutions. As some cities have a smart mile, some cities have, we are doing this in a structural way with the communities here for this, what we call smart zone. So we do their real-life testing and experimenting. We co-create with industry, with citizens. And of course, we want to stimulate business innovation there as well, to really experiment with new business models, with new products, and so forth, with companies that want to work there. Maybe I've heard the word living labs already quite a while in the hallways here, so I'll briefly explain what we understand as being a living lab, because lots of people have different understanding of what a living lab is or could be. We see a living lab as a way to improve digital innovations by actively involving users, in this case also citizens or shopkeepers, and other stakeholders, companies, governments, through co-creation during the development process and real-life intervention. So we really don't work with questionnaires at the end of the day or the week, but real-life, real-time intervention. So out of the lab, in the real city. A couple of projects that we're actively working on. One of them is proactive flooding detection and alerting. So we work with the fire brigade, the emergency services, but also with communities to do preventive alerting. There's been a lot of flooding recently in the city in which the emergency services were overwhelmed, and even the medical services were overwhelmed. So people actually got hurt for not getting to reach the emergency number. So we're really working on structural solutions. We're deploying sensors in the sewers, on the roofs. We're working with communities for community projects on alerting them and helping each other. So it's very much, the user is very much involved there. We're working with the postal services on air quality measurements on the postal vans. And when we're disclosing this information, we're mapping it with the historical data, with the real-time data, with what the models predict. So this is something that's very popular with the citizens as well. And we are also deploying a bike monitoring system with citizen interaction. So we're deploying GPS systems, navigation systems, and user-initiated input on different bikes throughout the city to get a very much the beat of the mobility within a city. So this is just a snapshot of what we are doing in partnership with the City of Antwerp. If you have more questions, Michel and I are definitely willing and I hope able to answer them. Thank you very much.
I know that Antwerp is having quite some issues with traffic jams. It's a very busy city, a lot of traffic coming through the city, around the city. How is this initiative involved with that problem? What have you done so far? What are you thinking could be possible solutions to the traffic problem?
first of all, Antwerp is not the #1 European city with the most traffic problems. It's just the second after Brussels. So it's not that big of a problem. We're just the second. We just have the second largest mobility issues in Europe as Antwerp. So that's okay. No, it's definitely a big problem. Antwerp, as after Rotterdam, the largest port in Europe. It's a big city. The roads are congested. So this is a very big problem. This is a very big problem. So we as a research institute, we want to do everything we can to help there, but this is nothing that technology alone will solve. This is something that needs concerted action on every possible level of policy, industry, and so forth. But we are doing everything we can to help there. I think we've heard before, mobility as a service definitely will be something that can alleviate the mobility issues. We're sure of that. We are working with multiple providers of mobility solutions, trying to understand their solutions, trying to make them interoperable, trying to get them on a platform level, platforms of platforms, see how they can become interoperable and so forth, APIs of the public sector, public transport and so forth. Working very much on that, but it's nothing that one actor alone will solve. And it's honestly something, not something that I want to present here because it's so large and we cannot pretend to have the solution. But we're definitely a lot of effort from our side is going into that. But it's a whole ecosystem that needs to move, and we are definitely doing our part. And maybe Michel wants to add something from the city side. But it's a nice challenge. Let's frame it as such, and we are working on it.
I think you said most of it, so it's indeed a challenge. I know that there are a lot of different projects going on in the city, and we want to make use of the tests that we do within the labs, and get data from that and move forward from that as well, together with citizens. But it's multiple years, it's a long term, and it's difficult to move roads around the city, let's say that. But the only thing that we really can say is that we're working on it. But that's not what everyone wants to hear.